Hey everybody, it's Tripl-L coming in with My Hero Academia chapter 354. Alright, I'm going to be trying to be doing this relatively fast. I got 2 hours to do this. Fingers crossed that I can get it done. It's a Tuesday morning. Hopefully we'll have the video up by Tuesday afternoon before live stream and all that. Anyway, hey everyone. Hope you're having a great day. Hero Academia chapter 354. I gotta say, I love that Jiro actually is doing something. Like, the more I sat with the chapter, the more I thought, like, yeah, this is a good idea. You remember that chapter with everyone looking constipated when they all thought about, like, All for One and him being a dick? You know, I really hope that Jiro is a sign of things to come, because I would love for all of Class 1A, except for Aoyama, because he's already kind of had his moment. I would love for all of them to just have, you know, witty one-liners against All for One. If Tokoyami gets one next chapter, I'm going to be really, really excited. But I really think every single person in Class 1A should really make good on their constipation face and make fun of All for One. This is just good. This is making me feel really happy. But yeah, the chapter was an All for One chapter and a Mocking Endeavor chapter. There's a lot of things that happen in the chapter that, well, no, there's a lot of critical lines in the chapter that, again, are kind of indicative of Horikoshi's concerns. You probably already know what I'm going to talk about. We're going to be talking about the self-awareness. There's a few critical self-awareness lines, and like every time we're talking about self-awareness, a story that's self-aware will always be better than a story that's not, because fundamentally self-awareness addresses weird plot points. That's the value of being self-aware. Like when you go there and you acknowledge that something looks weird, it takes away a lot from what people can point out in terms of, you know, bringing it down. Let's say you have a white wall. It's like covering up a hole with a piece of white paper, which is why it's fundamentally a good thing to do. And again, when it comes to fandom, covering things up like that helps, because then you have fans defending you. And that's a relatively powerful force to have within a fandom, though, you know, it kind of depends on whether or not you would say that was that would be something that's actually worthwhile to maintaining profitability in your series. A fandom being able to defend itself and profitability might not be something that go hand in hand. Still, you know, for us who are fans and we're talking and we're on like online forums, this kind of stuff is really important. Anyway, we will get into it right now with chapter 354. I'm just going to do the page-by-page walkthrough because I don't remember if I have any like general notes. If it pops up, it'll pop up. Alright, so the first page is an establishment page. So here is where we have something really critical in that first little bit. All for One has one glaring weakness, his life support mask, with the little note, if it wasn't obvious enough. So the thing here is that when we were looking at the spoilers, we were making fun of the first bit of the heroes talking about like All for One's weakness is that life support mask. And it's like, yeah, we knew that. Which is why Hawk's saying if that wasn't obvious enough, it's like, oh yeah, you know, I'm saying this, but like, honestly, you're pretty stupid if you didn't think this was the case either. That was pretty critical. And already we're seeing the value of this. That line there is what really says this page was just, okay, you know, hey readers, like I just want to reestablish, like this is the line of thinking, this is why they're thinking that in this particular direction. Just, you know, catching people up, like just putting emphasis on the mask. Nothing wrong there. This also justifies why Hawks went in for the kill shot. One thing that threw me off though was the data from Stain confirmed he took the whole rig with him during the prison break. I really wonder, I just went back to chapter 328 to understand what data the author gave us. I really wonder what data in particular they saw. So like on the author's side, like back in 328, like what they really talked about was like the waveform data. So assuming they had waveforms, they must have had all other kinds of records. So I do like that the stain data is such a black box that you don't really know what's in it, and so now the author can just kind of slot it in wherever he needs to justify some random bit of information. So on a writing level, this is actually extremely elegant. But ideally, when you're going into a series and you're doing everything super quickly, having those little black boxes, you know, just pretty much items that you don't really fully describe, like maybe you only address one element of the item. That can be really valuable because it allows for situations like this where you can just kind of add things onto it and just say like, oh yeah, it's always been there. I never said that it was only this one thing. So that's really good. If you're ever writing like a weekly web serial, you should probably use that technique. just because it makes your life a lot easier later on if you don't like really when it comes to writing weekly. Your biggest one of the worst things you can do, and it's also very ballsy if you do it, is to cement things. You got to be very careful with what you cement, because otherwise you might have to go back and do some rewrites. Next, we go into Hawk saying that, yo, yeah, with this kind of guy, we would go with him with sheer numbers. I'm happy that the official translation clarified this, because like the spoilers was making this sound really strange. But what this page is doing is justifying everything that we're doing here. Hawks points out that because he can steal quirks, this is why they don't want to actually throw too many people at him. Now, this is again where things get finicky, because the All for One quirk is too overpowered when it comes to the category of neutralizing a threat. So, before I get into that, let me just finish up page 2 here. Hawks pretty much establishes, because we are aiming for the mask and because we don't want our quirks to be stolen and power him up, it's only going to be me and Endeavor attacking All for One. It's just a justification for why it's a pair of them. Alright? Here is where the problem begins. You don't want to do it because he can steal quirks. However, All for One, it only takes a touch for All for One to steal a quirk from anyone that isn't Izuku. And this is the entire reason for why we are doing this whole Shigaraki hate machine thing. Or, at one point, this was the entire reason for this is one of the big reasons for the Shigaraki hate machine coming into contact with Izuku. All for One in this chapter is able to just touch Endeavor at one point in time. Now, my big question is, why doesn't All for One just say screw it to offensive attacks? And in that moment where he grazes Endeavor, why doesn't he just steal the quirk? The thing is, we saw what happens with Star and Stripe, and we also saw what happens in Vigilante. It doesn't take that much. Why doesn't he just go up to Endeavor, touch him for a second? Because he can clearly graze him if he is able to trick him. If he's able to take Endeavor by surprise, given what we've seen with how Star and Stripe got her quirk stolen, why even go through all this thing of trying to damage Endeavor? Just steal the quirk. So this is one of those fundamental areas where All for One looks really stupid because he has an easy win button. All for One is, well, especially with them in the sky, All for One is a one-hit kill type of character. He's just not stealing the quirk. So this is where I would really like clarification, especially because of the Vigilante stuff. You need to say, oh yeah, no, All for One needs to hold on for 5 seconds. The thing, the fundamental issue here is that you're using the All for One stealing ability as a threat. But the thing is, the All for One stealing ability is so overpowered that the only reason, top heroes haven't had their quirk stolen is because All for One hasn't felt like it. And the example here would be Best Jeanist. Best Jeanist could have had his quirk stolen and be made nothing. But no. Actually, imagine if All for One had just stolen Best Jeanist's quirk back during Camino. Best Jeanist isn't around to help out during Gigantomachia's rampage. Best Jeanist isn't around to help out during the fallout. So again, this is just showing All for One's biggest enemy is All for One himself. This guy isn't forward thinking. I don't understand why when you can steal quirks, you're not taking the quirks of the most powerful people and just dumping them somewhere else. Which really, I'm just talking myself more into this whole thing with All for One, but I don't understand how if you're All for One and you can take quirks at a whim like this, why you wouldn't take the quirks of the people who are likely to mess with you later. Because when you don't, it leads to situations with them still having an opportunity to hate you. Anyway, this is All for One, but fundamentally, the All for One quirk and its ease of taking quirks is such a it's just such a narrative quagmire. The ease of the quirk is such that it makes all for One's effort look stupid. And the thing is, like, if All For One was the kind of guy that says, like, oh yeah, I love battle, I love fighting, then it actually makes way more sense. But All For One's lazy, alright? This guy just sits around on his life support machine. He likes sitting around, like, surrounded by a bunch of corpses that have been modified. Also, he has a thing for, like, really muscular corpses. I think, now I'm talking myself into All For One actually is kind of in love with All Might. Actually, that might be why he didn't want to take away Endeavor's quirk. He might actually really have a thing for, like, big, bulky guys. I mean, like, fair enough. I mean, the one big, bulky guy he knows, like, really got intimate with him. So intimate, you could say it was mind-shattering. Anyway, one of the great things about All For One being, you know what, let's be nice, merciful, playful, is that we get to see more Hawks and Endeavors team-ups, and I'm here for that. I'm just looking here. Page 4, I think, is actually really, really good. So first off, I want to point out not Endeavors, All For Ones who used to be too fast. I actually like the too fast rhetoric, because Hawks was, you know, always a character that he goes too fast. The too fast thing could have been very dangerous for this character, because anything in excess is always dangerous. So I actually like that All For One is saying that he's not as fast anymore, and I would really love to see what the author wants to do with this kind of rhetoric. Right now, when I'm looking at this, it's like, okay, you know what? Hawks might actually not die from going too fast, or you might have a rhetorical turnaround where Hawks says, like, yeah, I was always the guy that went too fast, and, like, even now I'm going too fast. I'm not you know, you can make it work. I love that the author brought back the character theme. Like, to elaborate on the too fast and what you can do with it requires a lot, because you have to set up things to make the too fast make sense in context. Anyway, I do love the little bit about, you know, them both being crippled, and All For One giving us exposition on Hawks' wings. That was actually really neat. Given that Recovery Girl's efforts, all it really does is make someone's healing ability increase. Yeah, I think this is pretty alright given the time frame they had. The bottom of this page is also just justifying why they're doing what they're doing. I think the choreography here is very good. I think so far the justifications are strong. The birds are having a great day too. Like, it's been a while since I've gotten to talk with them around. All right, page 5, Vanishing Fist. Another page, I love it. I love that the intense heat passes through hard flame fan, and I like that it's neutralizing impact recoil. I like that All For One's actually saying, like, something's getting through to him. Really cool. Really makes Endeavor feel strong. Oh, you know what? That's something I saw. People, like, we were talking on the live stream, people on Twitter were like, oh yeah, they're so happy that Endeavor's taking hits, and it's just like, bro, you are fundamentally not a good person. Like, it's one thing if you don't like Endeavor and you have, like, all your justifiable reasons for it, but, like, come on, like, it's time to, like, come on. Wishing for Endeavor to fail at this point, it's a little bit tacky. Like, if Endeavor fails, a lot of people might die. So, like, wishing for his failure is equivalent to wishing for a lot of death here. It's just, you know, I just think a lot of people on Twitter aren't pragmatic enough to win a war. I think, like, you have to like, to some degree, you have to realize life is full of compromises. And, like, the other thing too is, like, in fiction, you have the promise of, like, actually this is a guy trying to be a good person. Do they realize that Endeavor's a protagonist in Hero Academia? Do they realize that when, like, Horikoshi talks about Hero Academia being a story about people with their backs to the wall trying to do their best, he's mostly talking about Endeavor, because, like, because that rhetoric doesn't really apply to a lot of other people in the series. Like, yeah, a lot of heroes have their backs against the wall by the threat that the villains are facing, but Endeavor actually has his back against the wall in almost all respects. Personal, familial, societal, heroics. Like, this is the poster boy for, like, back against the wall. Yeah, nah, man. Like, it's just funny because people don't realize even though the author has said it, what this story is about. Like, honestly, Horikoshi, you can tell he loves Endeavor. Like, look at the art quality on Endeavor's face. And Endeavor has, like, some of the most character rhetoric in the series, along with Dabi. Now, page 6, something amazing. All For One starts talking about Endeavor's heart. And the visual that All For One, or that Horikoshi uses, is genius. This face. Do you recognize the issue with this particular face? Like, specifically, look at the way that the eyes are drawn. That style of eyes is associated with the worst parts of Endeavor. So, when you're talking about Endeavor's heart not being in the right place here, and you're invoking those eyes, this is incredibly powerful. It calls back to what Inasa, I forget the exact order of the name, but you know, the guy from Shiketsu. What's the beauty here is that this type of endeavor is associated with having his eyes clouded and like associated with extreme anger. So that's the gaze that he's using against All For One, and it foreshadows that this is about to be bad. Like, what Inasa does as a character is that he establishes the good Endeavor and the bad Endeavor, and he's the one that signifies Endeavor, or he observes and therefore makes real Endeavor's character shift. And right now, he's going back towards the shades of the negative personality traits. So, very solid on Endeavor. I think depends on what Horikoshi wants to do here, but if he does something later where Endeavor during the fight with All For One has a more serene look on his face as he's doing it, I think you'll end up seeing that's when he performs better. Well, I mean, like, so being calm here, you would perform better. So, like, the big thing here is we have to look to see if Horikoshi wants to do that story where at a critical moment, Endeavor has a calm look as he attacks All For One. When that happens, this part will be much more powerful. I got confused here because the official translation and the fan translation have a critical difference. So page 6, Endeavor says we're landing damage on him. He doesn't have anything like hyper regen. So the Viz Media translation makes it sound like All For One doesn't have regen. Okay. Just to show like how critical like getting these lines right is, the fan translation says the damage is piling up. His super regeneration can't keep up. Like, you see the problem there, right? One of them says it's there, but it's just not effective. The other says it's not there. I really hope the official translation is correct on this one. Okay, I'm gonna assume he doesn't have hyper regen. Might have to take out a previous portion of the video. Anyway, All For One starts mocking Endeavor. We go into page 7. Good to see Shimage here. She is so good at just crowd control. I'm so happy. Second third of the page is pretty much All For One using the masterpiece and failed experiment lines. Okay, cool. Like, it's good on him for like getting, you know, good on him for pressing Endeavor's buttons. I'm personally like pretty tired of like the masterpiece rhetoric and the failed experiment rhetoric, but whatever. Keep pressing the buttons. The bottom of page 7 is by far the most interesting thing here. How he talks about how he had an eye on Endeavor, and he talks about fertile ground. It really, like, this makes it seem like All For One is more proactive, but we know he isn't, because All For One's the kind of guy that is interested in Eraserhead's quirk, but he lets Aizawa just live. Like, even though Aizawa is largely alone most of the time, the guy doesn't actually take any initiative to go and take out Aizawa, right? So, you know, you can talk about having your eye on it, but like, I assume you had your eye on it while sitting on your butt, because that's mostly what you do all the time. Anyway, what's really cool about all this is that, like, it makes it sound like when he talks, you never did find Toya's body. It makes it sound like, you know, that in conjunction with everything else, that he had a role in like the fire going up. Because, you know, I'm looking at you, Endeavor. I know you have a son. I know the son goes by himself to the forest to train all the time. So, you know, one day I just make the fires worse and I'm just there to pick him up. Right? Like, it makes it sound... It reinforces that. It makes it sound like there is actually a lot more foul play going on here. And this is important because it might indicate that Shigaraki was being screwed over from very early on. In which case, Shigaraki becomes a bigger victim than he was before. Now... here, when you have Hawk saying he had such a nasty card to play, this is where I would say, like, man, it sure does suck that you guys did not have a close All For One confidant that you could have gone and really interrogated, like really went out and pulled out all the stops, really asked all the good questions. It kind of really sucks that you didn't have someone who has the wisdom to blurt things out on the same day you find out that information. Man, really sucks that you didn't ask. Man, I'm sure if they did, they would have asked as many questions as possible. They would have asked about history with all the villains. I'm sure they would have really dug in there. I mean, like, what is the guy, like, especially if you have the guy just sitting in a cell for over a month. Like, you probably would have spent every day torturing, not torturing, interrogating him for information. I mean, this is Japan, the land of, like, forcing accusations on people and getting a 99% conviction rate. Like, come on. Like, surely Surely they would have. You know, it's too bad that they didn't have a someone locked up that they could have just grilled for as much information as possible. You know, would Tartarus have done a better job? Probably not. Tartarus wasn't really in the business of interrogating. Okay, we then have this is one of the big critical lines here. Hawks looks at this situation and points out that because Endeavor's heart is still so raw, he could not have fought and beaten Dabi. So what's important here is that this is justification still. Like the author is saying like, oh yeah guys, see, like this is why Endeavor and Dabi couldn't meet on the battlefield. It's because like it would not have worked, and here is the proof why, right? So the reason he does that is to reinforce that the previous stuff was a good idea. And in doing that, this is ultimately something that would be used against people that think that Dabi and Endeavor should have met up. So this is just like, it's a stopgap measure. There's still a good possibility that Endeavor and Dabi meet up later, but like this is just a stopgap measure. The question is like, what is generating this thought? Is it actually natural storytelling sense, or is it a quick little response to a possibility that the author envisioned? Honestly, the author should have envisioned that people thought that Dabi and Endeavor would have had a meeting, just because like their storyline is like one of the most charged storylines in Hero Academia. Endeavor is like a top 10 character, so he must know what people are thinking about Dabi and Endeavor. So that's what I read when I see that line there. It's just justification for previous choices, which of course very good on the author for having it here. Anyway, Hawks advocates for a cool head, and then we have the horrific. I don't really think it's too bad, but we'll have to see next week, or I guess like tomorrow when the spoilers come out. But we have Endeavor taking a bit of a hit there with the weapon. Now again, you know, I feel like if I was All For One, I would have zoomed in there, just smacked him on the face and stolen the quirk real quick. But you know, All For One knows his capabilities better than I do. Okay, so then we have Endeavor falling, we have Hawks trying to save him, we have All For One being like, brah, you're about to take a gigantic hit and I'm going to enjoy it. I like that they're bringing up prominence burn, so like that's still an ace in the hole here. But then we have the wonderful Jiro and Tokoyami coming in, and I'm about to like make a lot of fun of this. So first off, Heartbeat Wall. He used Air Blast, so this is actually a little bit clever. Heartbeat Wall being able to deflect Air Blast makes sense because, you know, wind is ultimately the movement of particles, and sound is ultimately a very specific movement of particles. So really what you have here is both characters using abilities that revolve around moving particles around, and in this case, Jiro's control of the particles trumps the ferocity of All For One's Air Blast moving the particles. So that's why this power interaction actually works. It's not like the cleanest, but it works under some lines of thought. Okay, and now the kids are here, and we do have to talk about, well, you know, when the kids are around, everything drops. Like, things do not get as dark as they could have been, because, like, Endeavor is the center of all the darkness, honestly. Now, the author goes in and he shows this in the most excellent way on page 14, how the kids make things lighter. The first third of the panel is good, with Jiro just showing a moment of weakness there, and it kind of makes sense. It says, okay, you know, like she's not, this isn't like a planned thing. No one thought it did. The last third of the page is hilarious because Hawks calls Jiro that Class A girl. I love that. Also notice that Class 1, the 1 has been dropped entirely, so it's just Class A. So yeah, whatever. There's a lot of goofiness that's going on there. Hawks points out that, you know, they'll get slaughtered. I think that's a very reasonable thing. Now, the middle panel is the one that I find to be technically the worst, but also indicative of the quality that the kids bring. Tokoyami, in this moment, during a war, when there is a madman, or like quite literally a few feet away from him, is telling Jiro to keep her butt still because his feathers are going to get ruffled up. Bro, what is going on that you're in a war and you're thinking about some girl's butt on your back? Holy crap moly. I don't know about you guys. Okay, you know what? Like, I haven't been in a war, but I have been in some like relatively perilous situations where like something going wrong could really end up in me drowning. Like, I personally don't think about the girl's chest on my back when I was a teenager and like I'm trying to get to safety. That's not something that comes through my mind. So like, there's two layers here. One is like, all for one, you're such not a threat that Tokoyami is thinking about a girl's ass on his back. And two, or or two, the other thing is like, Tokoyami, where's your head at, bro? Like, come on, be serious. This is a serious situation. If you get hit, I'm gonna have to be thinking it's because like you were thinking about Jiro's butt. So yeah, this is just one of those little moments there that it makes you giggle. It makes you giggle, man. It's funny. But it just kind of shows like how the kids make this kind of stuff, and it does remind you what Hero Academia is ultimately targeted at. And like honestly, like again, it's super funny, but at the end of the day, it all speaks badly on All for One. Like Tokoyami over there is on the verge of having a wet dream. Meanwhile, All for One's getting taunted by a child. All right, all right, all right. Tokoyami is saying that he can work together with Hawks. You have All for One calling them pesky gnats that swarm one for all. Oh wow, he actually says jobber in the Viz Media translation. All right, so then he brings up this comic, and at this point, I do have to bring up what White Despair said about this. That All for One is the kind of guy who will bring up that he used to read a comic to random characters, and like White Despair made a really good point. Like this means a lot to readers, but like to everyone just around there, he's like All for One just brought up that he likes to read comics. I don't think they care. Anyway, Jiro's final line there was pretty good, and she has like a really pretty shot there. I really hope that All for One doesn't just touch her face, because he has a habit of doing that, and just take her quirk. Oh, but no, it's All for One. He doesn't really. Is face touching actually a requirement for taking quirks? No, 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 it isn't. Vigilante didn't say it was. All right. Yeah, chapter 354. Honestly, hilarious chapter. I kind of made it funnier for myself by the end there, so I really appreciated that. I hope you guys enjoyed it too. I can't wait to see the next chapter. And again, I still think there's a lot of potential here. I don't like, at this point, I don't need in-depth fights. If you just show me characters doing stuff, like actually like doing like 3 or 4 panels of stuff, and not just a one quick mention, but like actually landing hits on people, I think I'll be really happy overall. Like every week I change what I want to see from Hero Academia. But yeah, at this point I've given up on in-depth fights. Just show all the minor all the minor class 1A characters hitting hard, and I'll be happy. If the author goes in there and he has all the 1A characters making fun of All for One into his face, then you know what? That'll be pretty worthwhile. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Let's end it there. Till next time, I hope you have an absolutely great day.